Hi, my name is Reuben. In this series of videos, I walk you through the sample Pool Doctors application that I developed for the introduction of Gennaro Mobile. In this particular video, I look at what I call the grid view pattern, which you'll see in job underscore header underscore grid and the customer underscore grid.4gl files and associated forms. So let's have a look at those when they're running. Okay, so I'll start the application, drill down to a particular job, and here, so do that again. So from the listing of the jobs, which displayed a number of job records, here we are, we're viewing one job record in particular. So we're looking at job number 010074, and we can see the customer when it was created. So we're displaying one record and viewing it, and we can do some associated actions. And the customer screen is very similar. We're displaying one customer record, and we can do some actions associated with that record. So that's why I call it the grid view pattern. We actually also see it in some completed jobs as well. We could come down and view the lines, photos, notes, timesheets, etc. for a completed job. But I'm going to concentrate on the job header grid and the customer grid. Well, in fact, I'm going to mainly concentrate on the job header grid files, and the customer ones and the other ones in the other programs are similar as well. So it starts off from the job header list. So if we look at the job header list.4gl, we can see that once we've selected a record, we call the job header grid and we say we want to view a job. So that's calling job header grid.4gl and this function view a job. And we're passing in as an argument the job number. And what this program basically does is it selects a record, then opens a window to display it, views the record, and then exits out. Okay, so it selects a row of data and then displays it. So I'll just have a look at the form that we display to. So job header grid form. It's all these forms basically follow the same pattern. We've got our form, we've got a VBox and a grid, and we've listed all the fields and labels that we're interested in. So the pattern we follow is the labels down the left-hand side and the jobs down the right-hand, or not the jobs, but the widgets for each particular data field we're interested in on the right-hand side. So it's just, dragging down and from the top the appropriate container and widget as appropriate. Now, one thing I do with most of my programs here is with each widget, I set the property. If we look inside here, we should find a property that displays everything on the right, justify equals right. So by default, iOS is going to display everything on the right anyway, but I set that property explicitly so that on Android we get the similar look and feel with the data being displayed on the right. And part of that, getting everything nicely aligned too, note how I've got all my fields lining up neatly on the right-hand side. So job header grid, and even the same with customer grid, I've got all my fields neatly lined up on the right-hand side and the gap between my label and fields. Again, I've got everything neatly in alignment. So it means iOS will do most of that alignment for you, but it means that when I run the application on Android, I get that same alignment. So that's the forms, job header, customer. So following that same pattern, grid with everything's on the left, the labels on the left and widgets on the right. So back into our 4GL. So we've opened that form, and then we call the UI underscore view function. Basically, what this function does is displays the data to the form, and it then does a menu statement to record what the user wants to do. So, but before that display, I skipped over a bit, the database select function. So scroll down to the bottom and we'll find the database select. So it's selecting a row of data from the table based on the argument we've passed in. So select everything from the job header table for this particular job code. And we just handle the case if anything goes wrong, we return false out of that function and we'll display an error message saying we can't find the record. Whereas if we do find the record, then we know we can go in and display it. So that DB select basically just selects one row of data from the database table. If we look in the customer 4GL, we'll see a similar function near the bottom. There we are, selecting everything from the customer table into the customer record. So once we've selected the row, test that we found it, we're opening the window, and then we're going to the user interface underscore view function, where we basically display the data we've found, perhaps manipulate it in some way, format it, so it's a nice expression, and basically display it to the individual fields that are on the form. So if we look at our form structure, we can see our various fields that are there, and we've basically taken the value we've got from the database and either displaying it by name, which basically means just display it to the field with the same name, or if we don't have, for these ones we've expressed this to the field name with that particular name there. So we do that display, and then we go into a menu statement to record what the user wants to do at that particular time. So in our code here, this job header, the user can go off and look at a customer. So on action customer is triggered by clicking there, goes off and looks at the customer, or the various lines, photo, notes and timesheet, the user can go off and investigate in more detail what's been recorded against those particular lines. So that menu statement is very much the simplest of the user interface statements we have. It's just you don't have to worry about the user entering any values. All we're doing is getting a response to the user clicking on something at a particular time on the screen. Other actions that are in there, we've also got the start and complete actions, and they're more based on the business rules of the application. But here we're saying, so we've got a new job, and we click start, then it's going to execute some database code which is changing the job status. And so when we come back to the list screen, the job status has changed, and it's now in progress. And similarly, once you've finished working on a job, then you come along and click the complete button, and we'll see that later, and that goes off to the complete screen and executes again. So changes some more data so that eventually the job ends up as complete. The key things to note here is within these menu statements, the on action codes, and they'll go off and execute based on the user selection. And what I didn't cover is how do you map these action names to what's on the form. Very simple. If we look at the form, we've got our button, property, so the name equals the start. So we need to click on that. Because that button's named start, then the action that's going to be triggered is on action start. And similarly for these buttons here, that button's named lines, so that's going to trigger the lines action and go off down this particular path. Okay, so that's the sort of mapping between what's on the form, is what the action name is, either on the buttons, and mapping back to the 4GL code that's going to be executed when that particular button is clicked. Other lines of code, interesting lines of code I've got on there is set action active. So based on the job status, we turn the start or complete buttons on or off. So notice in this instance, so this job that's new, we can click on start, but we can't click on complete. Whereas the job that's in progress, we can click on complete but not start. And the job that's complete, we can't click on start or complete. So that's handled by that set action active method to turn those actions on or off based on the value of the job status field. Okay, so and I'm just looking to see in the customer grid if there's anything different there as well. Most of these actions we're going to look at a little more detail because they're using some API devices, but again, this customer grid is just selecting the data. So in this case, selecting the customer code. opening the window, displaying the customer data to the field, and then use a menu statement to record the user's selection. So when we're looking at a customer, then we've got various buttons for actions at that point, and they're corresponding to the on action in the menu statement. So that particular pattern we'll you'll probably use quite a bit just when you want to display some data and you're not getting the user to change it, you're just getting them to see the data. So you're selecting a row of data, displaying it to the screen, and then a menu statement to record what their selection is. Okay, so and just sort of looking at the database, tying it back to the database. So the list screen was selecting a number of rows. The grid was displaying a row of data, and then similarly for the customer, with that foreign key relationship to say, okay, we're going to display one row of information about a particular customer. So the grid view displaying one row from each of your database tables.